There's something about water. It reflects the sky, it hides the bottom, and it keeps secrets better than the Vatican's HR department. Tonight, we're not chasing ghosts through attics or abandoned asylums with peeling wallpaper and questionable tetanus risks. Tonight, we're going underwater because sometimes the most haunted places are not abandoned, they're submerged. Entire towns, entire streets, entire childhoods, drowned not by curses, but by paperwork. This is the story of churches that sank and the bells that never stopped ringing. Welcome aboard. The Reschensee Bell Tower in northern Italy, the Alps, snow like powdered bone, air thin enough to make you honest. In the middle of Lake Resia, there stands a 14th century bell tower. Just the tower, nothing else. It rises from the water like a finger accusing God. In 1950, the villages of Guan and Reschgen were deliberately flooded to create a hydroelectric reservoir. Homes, farms, cemeteries, all erased. Progress arrived in a suit and tie and said, "You have 6 months." The bells were removed before the flooding. Remember that. The bells were removed. And yet, locals say that on cold winter nights, when the lake freezes and the air holds its breath, you can hear them ringing. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough to make you question your sanity. Now, skeptics say it's wind moving through the hollow tower, or ice shifting against stone, but wind does not ring in rhythm, and ice does not keep time. Here's the part that always gets me. When the lake was first filling, villagers reportedly stood on higher ground and watched their homes disappear beneath the surface. You want to talk about ghosts? Try watching your kitchen window drown. Hydroelectric power? Because nothing says renewable energy like permanent displacing 1,600 people. But here's the poetic cruelty. Water preserves. Under that lake, foundations still exist. Door frames, staircases, maybe even a forgotten shoe. A whole village paused mid-sentence. If ghosts are emotional imprints, imagine the pressure trapped down there. Not spirits, memory. And memory under pressure becomes something else. We think hauntings need violence, but sometimes the haunting is paperwork stamped approved. What happens when the land itself is displaced? Where do the dead go when their graves are flooded? Do they float, or do they settle deeper? Old Val Verde Church. In California, land of sunshine, influencers, and drought cycles, dramatic enough to deserve their own soap opera. Val Verde was once a thriving community. When reservoirs expanded, parts of the area were overtaken, and sometimes when water levels drop during drought, ruins emerge. Church foundations, walls, the skeletal geometry of belief. There's something unsettling about seeing a building reappear. It feels like it's coming back for something. During severe droughts across the United States, multiple submerged towns have resurfaced temporarily. It creates a bizarre phenomenon. You can walk through yesterday, and then it disappears again. It's like the land is inhaling and exhaling history. Drought is nature's way of saying, remember what you buried? Some locals report feelings of unease when the ruins are exposed, not sightings, not full body apparitions. Just the sense that you're trespassing or something paused, not ended. Imagine attending church in a building that knows it will drown. What sermons would you preach? Repent now, the lake is coming. Submerged spaces trigger something primal. Humans are not designed to navigate places that used to be dry. Water distorts scale, it blurs edges, it turns familiar geometry into alien architecture. When you see a bell tower sticking out of a lake, your brain glitches because that object belongs to gravity, not buoyancy. There's an evolutionary discomfort there. We fear deep water for a reason. You cannot see what's beneath. And when what's beneath used to be a town, your imagination clocks in for overtime. Kuzuryu Kuzuryu Dam. Post-war Japan rebuilt at an astonishingly speed. Dams were constructed across rural regions for hydroelectric power and flood control. Entire communities relocated. Shrines dismantled. Cemeteries moved. Or sometimes not fully. In Fukai Prefecture, villagers were submerged beneath what is now Kuzur- Kuzuryu Lake. Japan holds a complex relationship with water. It purifies, it destroys, it remembers. In Shinto belief, spirits inhabit natural spaces, mountains, rivers, trees. So, what happens when sacred space is deliberately drowned? Is the spirit relocated or irritated? There are quiet stories from older residents about hearing festival music across the lake at night, about lights flickering where no structures remain. Now, these verified paranormal events? No. But folklore doesn't require verification, it requires repetition, and repetition builds reality. Modernization is just exorcism with better funding. Japan also has the concept of onryo, vengeful spirits born from injustice. We usually imagine them as pale women with long black hair and unresolved rage. But what if the onryo isn't a person? What if it's a village? Displacement trauma is generational. When lands that held ancestors submerged, something intangible fractures. You can relocate a body, you cannot relocate memory. And water, despite its serenity, has long memory. Churches symbolize permanence, stone, faith, vertical defiance against time. To drown a church is symbolically violent. It's submerging certainty. There's something deeply ironic about House of God being overtaken by water. Biblically, biblical flood imaginary rites itself. Except this time, it wasn't divine wrath. It wasn't divine wrath. It was infrastructure planning. Noah built an ark. We built a dam. Which one feels more apocalyptic? In modern countries, submerged churches have become tourist attractions, romanticized ruins, drone footage, moody piano music, hashtags. But imagine being a family whose wedding photos were taken there. Tourism is grief with good lighting. Let's talk about the bells. Bells are meant to call, to gather, to mark time. In folklore, bells ward off evil spirits. So when locals claim they hear bells beneath water where none exist, it flips the script. Who's calling who? Is the bell calling the living back, or is it warning them away? Sound travels differently over water, especially at night. Temperature inversions can carry distant noises miles further than expected. Science offers explanations, but science cannot quantify emotional resonance. If you stand on a frozen lake and hear something metallic in the distance, your brain will fill in the blank. And what it fills it with depends on what you've lost. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most haunted places are not cursed. They are displaced. Submerged towns are moments to a simple reality. Progress has a body count, not always literal, but cultural, emotional, spiritual. We flood valleys for electricity. We relocate families for infrastructure. We call it necessary. And maybe it is, but necessity does not erase grief. So when you see a bell tower rising from a lake in Italy, or foundations reappearing in California drought, or quiet reservoirs in Japan that hold more than fish, consider this. Water is not silent, it is patient, and patience is louder than screaming. If you've ever hear bells across water, ask yourself something simple. Are they ringing to welcome you or remind you that some places were never meant to stay quiet? Lago di Vaglia. Beneath this artificial lake lies the medieval village uh, Frabage di Carrageen. Here's a twist. Every decade or so, the lake is drained for maintenance, and a village returns. Stone houses, streets, foundations. Locals walk through it like visiting a relative who refuses to die. Last drained in 1994, with rumors of future drainings teased like a Gothic themed park event. Imagine your hometown on a maintenance schedule. It is not haunted in traditional sense, it's haunted by anticipation. Curon Venosta, near the famous bell tower of Reschensee, sits the actual drowned town itself. Most tourists photograph the tower. Few ask about the 163 homes, 3 hotels, and farms that went under. Families protested, lawsuits were filed. The dam won. Progress does not negotiate with nostalgia. Sant Romà de Sau, a 11th century church that resurfaces during droughts. When water levels drop, the entire Romanesque church stands exposed like it's been holding its breath for decades. Locals say when the church fully emerges, bad weather follows. Nature does love dramatic timing. American America flooded more than 1,000 towns during the 20th century. Dam, rec- Dam constructions. We do not talk about that enough. St. Thomas, Nevada, submerged in the 1930s after the construction of the Hoover Dam. During the extreme drought in recent years, St. Thomas has fully re-emerged. Visitors walk among foundations and rusted relics. Imagine building a town, watching it drown. Then decades later, tourists take selfies in your former living room. Nothing says climate anxiety like your ghost tower making a comeback tour. The original town of Butler was flooded to create Watauga Lake in the 1940s. When the lake drops, the church's steeple occasionally reappears. Churches seems to be the last to leave. Faith floats. Or maybe it refuses. Derwent Village, flooded in the 1940s. When water levels drop, roads and foundations appear again. Eerie detail, RAF pilots practiced low-level bombing runs over the dam during World War II. A drowned village helped train for war. Water remembers everything, even rehearsal de- destruction. In China, Xicheng, known as Lion City, flooded in 1959 during the construction of the Jin'an River Dam. Unlike other drowned towns, Xichen is remarkably preserved underwater. Carvings, archways, entire city layouts intact. Divers describe it as walking through a preserved dynasty beneath green light. This one doesn't reemerge, it waits, patient, ornate, entirely intact. Japan's quiet cases. Beyond Kuzuryu Dam, many smaller villages were submerged during a rapid modernization in the Showa era. One particularly atmospheric case, Submerged Dam. Multiple communities were relocated in the 1950s. Older residents still visit the reservoir during Obon season to honor ancestors whose graves were removed or partially removed. Obon is about guiding spirits home. But what if home is underwater? That question alone could carry 10 minutes. That question alone could carry so many questions and so many discussions on that. So here's the pattern. Dams built in the name of progress, communities displaced, cemeteries relocated, churches submerged, occasional resurfacing during drought, and every resurfacing reopens something, not a portal, a wound. Some hauntings don't scream, they evaporate slowly. Some people believe some things were doorways like altars, shrines, monasteries, temples. Places built to reach upward, force downward. Let's map out the drowned holy places of the world. Abbey of Saint Clemente a Casoria. Not fully submerged today, but historically a threatened by flooding and river shifts. This 9th century Benedictine abbey sits near waters that have repeatedly tried to claim it. In medieval Italy, flooding was often interpreted as divine displeasure. Imagine being a monk, watching the river rise towards your abbey walls. Is it weather or judgment? Medieval chronicles sometimes described floods as purification. Water was both baptism and eviction notice. Nothing humbles a monastery like a rising tide. Sant Romà de Sau, built in the 11th century, submerged in the 1960s. When drought hits, the bell tower re-emerges. Locals say when the church stands fully visible, hardships follows. It feels biblical, except the flood wasn't divine wrath. It was a dam. There is something deeply unsettling about a church resurfacing during climate crisis headlines. It feels less like haunting, more like commentary. When the church comes back, it doesn't preach, it stares. Kuzuryu Dam. When dams were constructed across rural Japan during the Showa era, entire villages were relocated. Shrines were sometimes dismantled and moved, sometimes not fully. In Shinto belief, kami inhabit natural spaces. Rivers are not just water, they are presence. So when you flood a shrine, are you drowning architecture or negotiating with a spirit? During Oban, some families return to reservoir edges to honor ancestors. Imagine lighting incense on lake shores where your childhood temple rests below 40 meters of water. The smoke rises, the shrine does not. Modernization has a habit of relocating gods without forwarding addresses. The Stamhashwar Madhadev Temple. This one is wild. Twice a day, the Arabic Sea swallows this temple completely during high tide, then reveals it again. Devotees wait for the water to recede before entering. It is not a ghost story, it is a tidal choreography. But imagine watching your place of worship disappear beneath waves every single day. Faith here requires patience and waterproof sandals. Some gods test you with silence, others test your timing. Fangdu Ghost City, part of the Fangdu area were affected by the creation of the Three Gorges Dam Reservoir. Temples and shrines were relocated to higher ground. Some carvings and sacred spaces were lost or partially submerged. Fangdu is associated with the afterlife in Chinese folklore, a city of the dead. To flood portions of a place that already linked to the underworld feels like myth writing itself. Water covering a city of ghosts, layered hauntings, Architectural recursion. Ancient caves, mosques, and monasteries. Much of it is submerged after the Kuzuryu Dam project, and this is the lost monastery beneath the Euphrates. Hasanki had over 12,000 years of human history. Churches, Islamic architecture, cave sanctuaries. Some structures were moved stone by stone, others we lost to rising water. Imagine dismantling a sacred site block by block. Does the holiness transfer, or does it cling to the original earth? We saved the stones, the timeline drowned. Why do we drown holy places? Why do drowned holy places disturb us more than drowned houses? Because a house is personal, a temple is cosmic. When a church or shrine sinks, it feels like heaven itself took on water. It disrupts symbolic gravity. Sacred places are meant to anchor communities. When they are submerged, the anchor snaps, and the water does not anchor, it drifts. You could frame this around one central question. If a holy place is drowned, does the divine relocate, or does it remain beneath the surface? And if it remains, what does it think of us? We built temples to reach the sky, then we flooded them, and we wonder why the silence feels heavier. So, obscure, drowned holy places. In Japan, modernized fast in the Showa era, dams rose like concrete mountains, and in their shadows, shrines went under quietly. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just submerged. The shrines beneath Amagazi Dam. When the dam was completed in the 1960s, sections of local settlements were relocated. Among them were small roadside Shinto shrines, the kind with fox statues fading underneath moss, the kind no guidebook ever mentions. Some were formally transferred to higher ground. Some were dismantled. Some were simply left. Older residents have spoken about seasonal water fluctuations, revealing fragments of stone lantern bases along the reservoir edge. Not full shrines, just pieces. Stone feet without the body. Even gods get downsized during the infrastructure upgrades. Akawa Dam, one of Japan's highest flooded mountain hamlets in the 1950s. Jizo statues, protectors of children and travelers, once lined village paths. Some were relocated with ceremony, others were too weathered, too small, too ordinary. Divers have occasionally reported seeing small stone figures resting in sediments near formed roadbeds. No dramatic hauntings. Just Jizo standing eternal patience beneath green water. Think about that. A guardian spirit now guarding fish. The afterlife has a waiting room, it just happens to be underwater. The forgotten temple foundations of Samura Dam. Completed in the 1970s, Submerged Dam submerged parts of villages, including small Buddhist temples. Locals sometimes speak of fog gathering thickest above where the temple once stood. Is that meteorology? Yes. Is it poetic coincidence? Also yes. During drought years, foundations and cemetery markers have reportedly become faintly visible along the shore. Nothing dramatic, no cursed VHS tapes crawling out of the mud, just stone and absence. Obscure drowned holy places of Italy. Italy does not just drown towns, it drowns layers of centuries. When something sinks there, it's rarely one era. It's Roman beneath medieval beneath modern. History stacks like lasagna, and then someone adds water. The submerged chapel of Lago di Campotosto, created in the 1930s through dam construction, the lake swallowed small hamlets and rural chapels used by shepherd communities, not grand churches. Stone rectangles with simple altars. Locals have long told stories of hearing faint livestock bells echo strangely across the lake at night. Psychologically explainable. Acoustics over open water are deceptive, but combined livestock bells in drowned chapels, and suddenly it feels liturgical. When even the sheep sound haunted, you know the valley had unfinished business. The lost Paris beneath Lago del Salto. In the 1940s, the Salto Dam project submerged multiple villages. Parish churches were dismantled or left depending on feasibility. There are accounts from older residents describing how some cemetery exhumations were rushed. Relocation was incomplete. Imagine being told you have 2 weeks to move generations. Grief does not pack effectively. When water levels fluctuate, locals claim to see stone fragments and crosses along the banks. Not full structures, just suggestions. Fragments are more disturbing than wholes. They leave room for imagination. The chapel beneath Lago di Malveno. Water levels in Malveno have historically been manipulated for hydroelectric purposes. There are minor accounts of submerged religious structures near its margins in earlier reservoir phases. Nothing dramatic, enough for documentaries, which makes it better, because the quiet ones feel less like attractions, more like secrets. Here's what makes these obscure cases powerful. No famous towers, no cinematic drone shots, no horror movie lighting, just small shrines, Jizo statues, shepherd chapels, parish cemeteries. Drowned, not in spectacle, but in bureaucracy. And the smaller the holy place, the more intimate the laws. A cathedral drowned is headline tragedy. A roadside shrine drowning is personal. It served maybe 20 families, and now it serves carp. We gather tonight at the shoreline, not of an ocean, not of a river, but of memory. Beneath still water lies Beneath still water lies altars that once tasted incense. Beneath green silence lie bells that once called the faithful home. Beneath drifting silt lie names carved in stone by hands that believed permanence was possible, and we flooded them. We told ourselves it was necessary for power, for progress, for light in the darkness, and yet the darkness did not leave. It simply moved underwater. If there are spirits beneath these reservoirs, they are not rattling chains. They are not clawing at halls. They are waiting. Waiting with the patience of stone. Waiting with the calm of something that knows time will eventually lower the water again. Because water recedes, drought comes, concrete cracks, and what we bury in the name of advancement has a habit of reappearing when we least expect it. So if you stand by a reservoir at dusk and the air feels heavier than it should, if the fog gathers where no structure stands, if you hear something that sounds almost like a bell through if you hear something that sounds like a almost like a bell, though you know there are none, do not ask whether it's haunted. Ask what was displaced. Ask whose prayers were interrupted mid-sentence. Ask which gods were relocated without consent. We build temples to reach heaven, then we drown them. And we still expect blessings to arrive on schedule. Tonight, as you leave this vessel, and return to your dry land and electric light, remember this. Water keeps the shape of what it covers. It presses against the steeples. It settles into doorways. It it memorizes foundations. And one day, when the level drop, it will give those shapes back to us. Not as ruins, but as reminders. Go gently across still water, because beneath it, something sacred is still standing. And it has not forgotten. Amen.